Hey folks, welcome to Affiliate Nerd Out Deep Dive Edition. Today we'll be talking about calculating conference ROI for businesses, and we'll be answering that big question of which conferences are actually worth the investment and how do you prove it. Most companies out there are still guessing. You go to an event, you have this great conversation, you come home feeling like it went really well, but most companies don't have a clean way to show leadership the true value and return on that trip. And that's going to end today. We're breaking down exactly how to measure conference ROI, what metrics actually matter, and the simple framework that you can use to justify or challenge your 2026 conference calendar. And I brought in three experts to see what kind of different angles we can come about in adjusting and figuring out this angle. First up, Noel Spagna, affiliate manager over at Motley Fool and conference veteran who knows how to turn conversations into real pipeline. Welcome back to the Nerdatorium, Noel.
Thanks so much for having me back.
You got it. And next up, Lacey Thompson, another affiliate nerd out alumni and former agency founder who has a disciplined, budget conscious approach to evaluating event value. Thanks for joining us, Lacey.
Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. And then hitting cleanup, Jason Steele, producer of CardCon and someone who understands what truly drives ROI from the conference organizer side. Welcome, Jason.
Great to be here.
Awesome. And today we're going to cover formulas, benchmarks, follow-up processes that help teams stop relying on vanity metrics and start connecting conference spend to measurable revenue. So let's jump in with our first question. And it's going out to Noel. For someone who attends more conferences than most, what's the biggest misunderstanding people have about what actually drives meaningful ROI at events?
I think the biggest misunderstanding isn't really just about conferences in general. I think it's just this industry and how relationship building focused it is and how important it is to form the connections, to build the trust, and then to nurture those relationships that you make. And one of the best ways to do that is at these events and at these conferences. Sometimes ROI can be calculated pretty quickly depending on what you discuss, whether it's, at the event you got an integration fee waived for being there in person and meeting with somebody, or you put together a lower cost placement package or something like that, or you launched a partner really quickly. But other things are going to take a little bit longer. They're more longer term plays. It's a marathon and not a sprint. I always like to say that about affiliate too, because sometimes things take time. So those relationships also benefit you down the line, because if, say a partner has a new opportunity that they come to you first because they know you better and, you've got that relationship with them, or you're able to get some sort of a make good out of that partner because you have such a strong bond and relationship, people get to know you as more than an email address. And I think that's something that people need to really consider when they're thinking about these events.
Oh, totally agree. I love the face-to-face time more than anything. And I think it's really important. Just being on the screen is great, but nothing beats shaking a hand and hanging out with people and making them laugh. So great start off there. Lacey, this next question's for you. When brands come to you excited about a conference, what do they think success looks like? And how do you help them realign around the metrics that truly matter?
Yeah, I think going off of what Noel said too, people that know this industry really well know that it really is about the relationships, and that's what success looks like for a lot of brands and a lot of people that are in our industry. But for CMOs and leaders at companies, usually that's not enough. They want something more tangible to be able to say, like, it's not just about having great conversations, because that's not a KPI. And so really what I wanted to do several years ago was build a framework that our team could use to prove the value of those conversations and keep track of it and articulate it to leadership, because that's how ultimately you get the budget to continue to go to these conferences. And as Noel said, it is really important to be consistent with it. So I think about measuring success in three buckets: reach, relationships, and revenue. And so reach is all about, like, how many conversations are you having with both existing and new audiences? So the way that we track that is what we call high value conversations. And so it's just setting up those meetings and having a really important discussion with an existing or new partner. Relationship is all about how deep those conversations go. So you can show up to a meeting and have a fluffy discussion about how the conference is going for 15 minutes and how Thanksgiving was or how your holidays are, whatever the case may be. But if you come prepared and you actually have data and some background information, qualitative information, it is always good to kick off your conversation with something that is relationship building, because we're all people and we want to get to know each other. But then at some point to be able to get really deep into the discussion and understand what is the meat and potatoes of what you want to accomplish, I think that's really important as well. And then revenue is really just focused on like the pipeline that you're creating with those conversations. So being able to articulate, how much was that integration fee that you got waived, and list those out so that your CMO knows, okay, we actually saved this much, or we made this much revenue and we spent this much to send you there. It's a no-brainer to keep doing it. And when you start to track those three things, then you can really understand which conferences actually build revenue and business value versus just building up your airline miles, which is also great too. And I love to do. But then, the next step beyond the reach, relationship, and revenue is the follow-up. And I like to track follow-ups in 3 categories as well. There's, a generic follow-up. Not every conversation is going to go super deep and have tons of action items coming out of it, but it's still important to follow up and connect the conversation that you had to who you are via email so that you can continue to build that relationship in the future if need be. And then there's networking follow-ups where maybe it's not something specific to your relationship, but we talked about somebody that might be good for me to talk to. And those can also have long-term value. It might not be tomorrow, but they can lead to great things down the road. So they're not insignificant. Obviously, the revenue generating follow-ups are the most important, where you want to hammer out the details of how a partner is going to promote you or whatever the case may be. So you can either develop your own baseline of what % of your follow-ups you want to be in each of those buckets, or I like to start with a 20-20-60 to try to target that. And then when you keep track of that at each conference, which ones are generating more revenue generating follow-ups versus just generic follow-ups. And again, it's just really important, as Noelle said, to maintain consistency, because when you do attend these conferences over and over again, it's more likely you're going to start having more revenue generating conversations as you go to your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, because when people know who you are and know that you're there and they know you're ready to do business, they're much more apt to have a conversation with you and get you on their schedule.
Well, great points, great value. You're already seeing people in the comments. The 3 R's are so insightful. Excellent. Thanks for interacting there, Kayla. And Kristen Evans loves the cat cameo. So thanks for that, Noelle. And Lacey, going off of what you're saying there, I find, yes, even if you just network and hang out with somebody, it's always important to put them into your CRM, take some notes, and make sure that relationship is going to nurture for the future. Even if you don't have an action item today, you never know who you're going to meet and want to hang out with. I think you and I might have met 6-7 years ago at an affiliate summit, and it just kind of blossomed into where we're at today as a relationship. So you never know where it's going to go. All right, Jason, as an event organizer here, what's one misconception attendees have about how much ROI a conference can realistically generate if they don't approach it strategically?
Yeah, I mean, Lacey makes great points about really quantifying it, but there's a lot of unquantifiable, which I think she touched on. We talked about Affiliate Summit. I showed up at Affiliate Summit. I sat down with my laptop. The guy sitting at the same table as me after a few minutes says, "What do you do?" I'll cut to the chase. We've done 6 figures of business together, much more than that. I had a very strong business relationship with this company over the years. And it all started because I just sat down, did everything on my schedule and worked on my laptop. So there's this unquantifiable aspect to it. And I'm a small business owner, I'm a freelance writer, consultant, etc. For me, I don't, have to produce a spreadsheet and show it to my boss. I use my freaking flyer miles and hotel points to go to these things because I'm an expert in that field. But then at the end of the day, I look at it and I say, hey, did anything come out of that? And I've had, and this is extreme, but I had one person I met at a conference 10 years earlier call me up and say, hey, I want to do business with you because I remember meeting you and I remember you're a credit card expert. So sometimes it's unquantifiable. And frankly, there's a little bit of maybe a conflict of interest, right? Because an employee who might want to go to a conference and get his or her name out there and make all sorts of contacts that are going to be valuable to them and their career for many years forward that may or may not be valuable to the company next year. So, that's a factor to consider as well. After attending, you can see some of the badges hanging on my wall. I've attended dozens of conferences. I've spoken at dozens of conferences. I've produced a dozen conferences myself. The intangibles is what I'm going for. Another conference producer told me years ago that your job isn't to book a hotel room and make a catering order. Your job is to bring people together, to facilitate these interactions. And Affiliate Summit's a great example of a pretty content light, networking heavy conference. And then every conference producer I know is trying to strike that balance.
Yeah, great calls. I love the call out of might not be the right fit for the business, but that's a risk that they need to be willing to take to invest in that person, to gain their loyalty, for them to stay longer, to educate them and to get them learned up and networking. And you've got to take that risk as a company. I feel like, they might have a flight risk at some point. People leave careers and jobs. It's going to happen. And being scared about sending somebody to a conference just seems asinine to me. Like, you've got to go and do that. All right. We've got another comment. Kristen Evans says, thanks for pulling this together, Dustin. So helpful, especially with brands and small agencies who are trying to determine the worthiness of these investments. Happy to do it, Kristen. Thank you for commenting. Moving into, quick question. You've got all your badges. My old mentor, David Vogelpool, used to do this. He had a big old collection of them. I can't throw them away fast enough when I get home from the conference. Like, Lacey, what's your stance?
100%. They're in the garbage.
Noelle?
These aren't all of them by any means. These are just a few that happen to make its way to my office. And sometimes, I spend a few $1,000s a year on badges, ordering them for my conferences. So every now and then I feel like, maybe I should keep one.
Okay. All right. Noelle, your stance?
I don't save them. I don't have any.
Some like them as a badge of honor, and I get it. I totally get it, Jason. That's awesome.
Souvenir.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Going back to Noelle, from a brand's perspective here, what inputs do you track before, during, and after an event to calculate whether it's worth attending?
The biggest thing to me is tracking my meetings, and it gets to be a lot. Every conference I have a notebook with me at my side all the time, because if I'm not writing everything down, I'm going to forget things. And, Affiliate Summit West is coming up. That's probably the one where I have the most meetings. And usually I have anywhere between 25 to 30 meetings. And I tell people that, and they're like, where do you even eat in this schedule? But I try to fit in as many as possible because, again, for us, it's what new partnerships can we bring to the table? What can we do to strengthen the existing partnership relationships? And you have to put that time in to meet with these people. So again, it's just writing everything down. And then I have a tracker internally that allows me to put down all the partners that I met with, kind of what we discussed, whether it's a new or existing partner, and then just looking at what the potential is. And I track it months after. I'm still going back to conferences and people I met in 2024, because again, some of them take time. Certain relationships take months and months to launch because we're finance. So sometimes there is red tape in contracts and things that you have to work out. So it's just kind of keeping that ongoing basis of what did we get from that partnership, whether it was a launch, did we discuss an initiative that we then brought to the table, and then it brought in X amount of revenue and whatnot. So it's really, for me, critical to, again, just really make sure all my meetings are on the calendar. I've got a record of everything. I'm using the app for the event to track all of that as well. And sometimes conversations get had, in the app as well. And then again, just writing everything down and following up later.
Great tips there. I also love to jam as many meetings in as I can. And you brought up a good point about meals. Like, when do you eat? Those are my most important meetings. The people I want to sit and eat with are the people that I really want to get in tuned with. And you got 3 breakfasts, you got 3 lunch, you got a couple of dinners. Get your favorite partners and ask them first if they have an opportunity to meet for one of those. That's the strategy. Do you guys go along with that as well, Jason, Lacey?
Yeah, I love meals. I host meals. I am actually looking at producing a series of meals on behalf of a client under the CardCon name that hopefully will be coming up next year. Yeah, it's probably goes back to the beginning of humankind. People bond over food.
Great call.
Yeah, I love meals as well. I think one of the best events that we did was a breakfast at IPX, and it was because it allows you to become so conversational with everybody in the room. But the hard part is documenting all of that when you're like eating,
Yes.
So to Noelle's point, like having your notebook there and being able to like just jot down a quick action item after a conversation that you have is really important.
Yeah, and it's rude to be writing on the table too while you're trying to eat.
Right.
Hey, I want to
Yeah.
follow up, because to me, the downside of conferences is you have a good conversation, you follow up the next week, and maybe they're just not interested and they were just being nice and smiling, or maybe they just ghost you. That's always a letdown. But if someone's writing it down, you kind of get the feeling like in a world where we're starved for other people's attentions, we're staring at our phones. Someone writing something down to me tells me that they're taking what I say seriously.
Oh yeah, such a great point. Like there's been conferences where I tried to make notes in my phone while I'm talking to people, and that was just a disaster. Like it's not a good practice. It makes you look like you're not paying attention. So not a good workaround with technology. Kristen Evans says, I have all my badges. That's surprising to me, Kristen. I would expect you to be a trasher. And then Ashley says, I feel like when you attend a conference and tell those who are there to drive business forward versus the concerned about their network, honestly, those who are driving business forward make a bigger impact on the longevity of a relationship. Do you find that true, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes, I think, to Jason's point that, if you know that the person that you're spending your valuable time with cares enough to write things down and follow up with you and like make progress, then you feel more fulfilled. It's obviously these conferences are super fun. And in this industry, I think we do a very good job of having a lot of fun, but it doesn't have to be a trade-off. You want to be able to like produce results at the same time.
Great. All right, Lacey, next question's for you. When you're evaluating event performance for a brand that you might be working with, what are the framework that you use to separate like the busy booth energy from the actual ROI producing that activity?
Yeah, I mean, from the agency perspective, it's a little bit more complicated because every brand handles things differently. When you're in-house at a brand, you know how your brand handles it. It's one way. When you're at an agency, you really have to start with the goals of the brand and understand what they're trying to accomplish before you just sort of prescribe. But just assuming that I don't have the brand's goals for the sake of the conversation and what I would prescribe without that, I typically like to have a framework where, if you think about it as like a quadrant, on the x-axis, you have qualitative ROI conversations that are based on revenue. And then you have strategic conversations that are maybe something more complicated, a bigger partnership, maybe with another brand, which involves more people within the organization. So there's lots of different buckets of conversations that fall into strategic conversations. Those take longer to matriculate. And so then on the vertical axis, you have existing partners and new partners. And so what I like to do is sort of plop each of my conversations into one of those buckets: qualitative ROI with existing partners, qualitative ROI with new partners. And I do usually recommend to brands, like Noelle said, to get as many meetings in as you possibly can. That being said, sometimes, as Jason said, some of the best conversations that lead to the most success happen very organically. And so I typically will book tons of meetings back to back and then build in the small breaks so that brands will have time to sort of circle around and just have organic conversations, also go to the bathroom, eat, those are important things for everybody. And so really, like, if you can still, as you have the organic conversations, put them into each of those quadrants, you really want to try to have sort of an even assortment of the types of conversations that you're having with the types of people. And then if you can get one conversation that falls into multiple buckets, that's the jackpot, really.
Awesome. Well said. Got another comment here. Let's address it because it's one of my favorite people in the industry, Jade Mayerberry here. Planning to get in a day early or stay a day late this year to get an additional face time. I assume she's talking about ASW. Anyone else planning to do this? I'll let you guys talk. My plan is always get to Vegas a day early, get all the gambling and drinking out of my system early on so that I'm well rested. I get to bed by 10 o'clock and hit that Monday really hard. And then I fill up my meetings and then I leave immediately on Wednesday because I'm just so broke down by the time Wednesday rolls around. What are your guys' theories here?
Yeah, I show up usually. This year I'm actually coming in on Saturday at ASW.
Wow. Okay.
And because sometimes you can fit things in on Sundays, and a lot of people have started to have dinners and things like that because there's so many after events now, right? Especially with ASW. So there's only so much time on Monday and Tuesday. So I think getting there early, I would agree with you though. Like I've noticed by the third day, like if you even just in the conference hall, like that difference of the amount of people that are there Wednesday versus Monday, like that's huge. So I think people at that point have had their fill and they're ready to get home.
Agreed. What do you got?
I'm not good at that. Well, first of all, I live in Denver and there's 18 flights a day, probably more than that between Denver and Las Vegas. So I'll fly out Monday morning and I'll get there. And then when I'm done with my last meeting on Wednesday, I'll just head straight to the airport and I'll be home by dinner. And it's such an easy thing for me. Yeah, I probably do that too bad because one year in particular, I remember a friend called me and said, "Oh, I'm here with someone you want to meet." And I said, "Well, I'm already at home." And, Las Vegas, I say, is kind of across the street from Denver, and with, multiple flights an hour, it's very easy for me to just go home as soon as I feel like I've finished my last meeting. Maybe I should probably stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, for sure. That is a quick flight. My Wednesdays, I don't schedule meetings except for the early morning. And then I go to sessions in the afternoon and then I'm just spent. I don't have any more energy to interact. I just know myself to not schedule that many meetings on Wednesday. So, Noelle, you getting there and doing 4 nights. 4 nights is too much in Vegas for me. Like I can't do 4 nights there. Like it's physically impossible.
Well, I have a friend in the industry. It's their birthday weekend. So
all right.
I'm celebrating.
All right. So you're doing cross duty. I got you. Jade, that's my plan every year, says Ryan. Thanks for tuning in, Ryan. All right. Next question going off to Jason. As a conference owner, what's the most reliable indicators that an attendee or sponsor will generate strong ROI from your event?
A lot of times what I'll do is I'll send them a list of companies and titles from the previous year. And they look at that and they say, "Oh, wow, yeah, these are definitely people I want to meet." And, as an after action report, and granted, my conference is small. I'll have, maybe 300 people at CardCon, but these are like the top people in the credit card and credit card affiliate marketing world. And so I try to keep a very high quality group of attendees. I never want part-time, wannabe kind of people there. I want real top professionals there, and when they come back, the sponsors on my title sponsor has returned for the last 5 years, and I'm hoping they'll return for next year. Looks good. So I get a lot of returning sponsors. I get a lot of returning attendees. That they don't come back unless you're delivering value. And that's for me as a conference producer, that and obviously the feedback they give me. "Hey, was this of value to you?" And they say, "Yes." I say, "Why?" And usually it's because they met the right people, not because they thought this presentation was amazing, which they might have. That doesn't give you direct ROI. It's, did I meet the right people? Did I shake hands, do the deals, and follow up? So at a CardCon, for example, the first day, we've been calling it the fun day. I think we're going to rebrand it something like the deal day or the networking day, because we take tours, we have lunch, we sit around a pool or a beach or something, and everyone gets to meet everyone else. And people told me that was invaluable. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on, is facilitating those connections.
Excellent. Now, rounding out this conversation about like your pre-setup here, like I've got a quick graphic that I like to show and semi-brag about. This is my conference last year. This is what it looked like. It's a mess. Like it's just meeting after session. Is this how you guys control your events? This is what you're trying to do? I've been taught that I should go home exhausted, and I've seen from others that they don't like to fill up their calendar. They like to be on the seat of their pants and on the edge of their seat and adjust to the conference itself. What are your guys' thoughts on booking the entire conference?
I mean, I love to do it. I think that it does take more work. It takes more energy. You have to prepare, but I think you usually get more out of it. I've heard some people say though that the most fruitful conversations are those that they have in the lobby of the conference and they're not even planned. So I don't think it's necessarily one size fits all. It really just depends, again, what goals are, how you think you can achieve them, and what matters to the leaders at your company.
Good call. Yeah.
Well, I go beyond that, and I would say it depends on the conference. I have some conferences that I've been to where my schedule looked like yours. Every minute of the day, something going on. I have other conferences, maybe I'm going there the first time. Maybe the conference is on the periphery of the business that I do. And I'm kind of just going to check it out. I want to meet people spontaneously. I want to sit in on the sessions. I want to get the feel or flavor of it so that maybe next year my schedule looks something closer to that.
Great. Jade chimed back in and said, Jason, this is exactly what I do living in LA, fly in early, meet up, and then she's going to try that session out this year. And then Kristen Evans says, Dustin's calendar stresses me out. I know it does. It should stress out people. It's what it's meant for. What about, this is for all of you guys, what are some reasons to meet that you guys like to do when you're making your schedule? Anybody jump in?
I mean, like the agenda?
Why are you meeting people? What is your reason to meet with people? Is like, for example, I want to meet publishers first. Secondarily, I want to meet brands. Thirdly, I want to meet agencies. And they all have different objectives, but like that's my priority list, is to get more meetings with publishers if I can.
I think it definitely depends on what side of the house you're coming from. For me, as the brand, it's always partners. Okay. And trying to bring in, new publishers to promote us. But Motley Fool is also a publisher, so that kind of can even get confusing sometimes. So I also try to, yield those conversations and bring any potential opportunities back to that side of the house for us. And sometimes it is like technology. Sometimes I bring partners for other divisions of marketing. Sometimes it's a native partner, or a display partner, or an email partner, So it's really just anybody who can help us expand the reach of our business.
Yeah, I have a very multi-pronged agenda. I could be inviting people to my conference. I could be looking for opportunities to sponsor. I could be looking for opportunities on my own website that I have a little bit of affiliate links. And it just goes on and on. I mean, you'll never know who you're going to meet at a conference and what services or products they could offer. And sometimes I'll meet people spontaneously, and you could tell both me and the person I'm meeting are kind of brainstorming, like, how is it that our lives intersect? How could we potentially work together? Sometimes we come up empty. Sorry, it's just not what I do. Other times you hit the jackpot and it's like, wow, you're exactly who I'm looking for. Yeah. And you just never know.
I don't want to make my perspective sound like overly altruistic, but I think this is also partly because I started my career on the brand side. And so I have some cynicism about, agency side folks and publishers about like how they promote themselves. I always want to try to bring something that is valuable to the person that I'm talking to. I want to try to help them in some way. And I think that is one of the things that I just absolutely love about this industry, is that you can show up and be helpful, and it usually leads us to something that's mutually beneficial, even if that's not necessarily how you intended it. And I just think that's really a nice part of our industry compared to some of the other marketing channels.
Great calls. Love them all. Jason, you've got a question from Ryan asking, how many times do you need to show to gauge if it's worth your time and energy?
Well, I mean, it depends. I have gone to conferences that were well produced with good people, and I just said, yeah, this is not my crowd. I don't think I'm coming home with the right business opportunities. If it is your crowd, you can tell, hey, I just need to get to know people. I need to return. There's, one conference that I've been to the last 13, 14 years. And I keep going. It's the FinCon Financial Bloggers Conference. So it doesn't have much to do with affiliate, but it's my crowd. And I'm always going to come with opportunities from there. Other conferences I've gone to and just said, it's a good conference, just not my crowd. I'm not getting the opportunities out of this. So I think you could get a pretty good, I hate to make an analogy, but sometimes like dating, right? I've been married for 20 years. But I vaguely recall, you show up for dinner and you can often tell pretty quickly whether or not this was going to work or not.
Agreed. One and done could be the move.
Right. But if you think of it as in a broader perspective, hey, is this my crowd? Do I see potential business opportunities here? Even if the fish are biting and you don't catch one, you still go back to the pond again to try again. Other times it's just not your crowd.
Yeah, for sure. Another quick question for all of you. Has anyone tried Microsoft Bookings to manage client meetings? I have not. I've never even heard of it. So good little tip there, Julie.
The conference software. And or your personal calendar like Google Calendars, if that's what you use. Yeah, I don't see any substitute for the conference software.
I mean, I would love a software that would interact with the conference software and your existing calendar. Like whoever breaks that nut is going to kill it for all
I
of
don't
us.
see why the conference software shouldn't sync with your, like, say, a Google Calendar or a
Agreed.
Microsoft Outlook calendar. It should. And now I have to double check to see if my conference software does that.
I mean, here's a common thing I see is I will create within the app, ASW's app, I think is pretty great. But when I export it and import it into my calendar, now it's done. And if I try to do another export, all of it's coming back. And now I have double meetings of that same thing. And it's super frustrating. I don't know if you guys feel the same.
And God help you if you aren't in the same time zone.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't know which time zone is. I got to double, triple check everything. Otherwise, I miss meetings by an hour.
Yeah. Somebody needs to break this code, though. I hope it's done in the next couple of years with AI, whatever it is.
We need to do a calendar. That seems like a pretty easy use case for AI.
For sure. All right, moving on. We're right on track for timing here. Noelle, you're known for generating a pipeline efficiently at events. Like, what's one tactical move you like to make on site that consistently turns conversation into real opportunities?
For me, it really is just networking all the time. I like to get to know people as people. And I want people to remember me as Noelle, not just that woman from the Motley Fool that's, emailing them all the time.
Yeah.
I want to build those relationships again. And some meetings are different from others. Some people want to jump straight into business, but a lot of time, it helps to just have that kind of small talk and get to know each other. And you're just kind of talking, making introductions, kind of learning a little bit about people. And, you're just trying to connect. And to me, those relationships are the ones that I have usually the greatest opportunities with down the line, because they're the ones that I have the best relationships with. And I think it's also important to know, and I had a really good conversation with an industry veteran who's just known for being one of the best at networking. And he had said at CJU, I got to sit down with him and he was like, I don't think some people don't realize that the after hours events are so important.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, sometimes you're tired after the end of the day, you're overstimulated, whatever the case may be. And some people don't always go to these things. I can't tell you how many times you just sit down and people introduce you to other people there. And then you might just be, bumping into people having a drink and they're like, wow, I really think that we can do business together when they find out like work. And that happens more times than others. And I think that's where you really build a lot of the relationships and the friendships even that come out of these events that are so valuable. So if you can stick it out and you're not completely exhausted, and we know ASW is probably one of the most exhausting conferences because you're going, and especially for me, coming from the East Coast, you're extra exhausted, but just stick it out and try to at least go to a couple of the after hours events to really build those relationships up. And believe me, it's worth it.
It sounds like you were talking to Presh. Nobody on earth is a better network marketer than that guy. Like every event that I've ever gone to with him, he's like, oh, what do you need? Okay, hey, come meet me. And I'm going to show you to this next guy. He physically walks you over and makes you shake hands with somebody else. It's an amazing trait that guy has. He's the best in the world at it. And it is so true.
Well, he's a host. That's his job as a host, when you go to his event. And I'm sure he continues that role in other people's events.
Oh, for sure. He does everybody's event. I saw some pictures of you, Noelle, at Press Connect last year. And that thing starts at 10 p.m. And it just goes to your point, like, prepare for these 3 days. Like, you got to do what you got to do. You got to take a Red Bull at 5 o'clock when you're not a Red Bull person. You got to do what you got to do to make it through these kinds of things.
Yeah, it really is an all day marathon. That's what I always say. Like sometimes if you come into a conference earlier and like, even at CJU, like the first Sunday night, I was one of the people, I went to bed early and I was like, I'm trying to be responsible because the next 2 nights are going to be like those super late nights. So you try to catch your sleep in when you can.
Sleep when you can. Lacey, next question for you. What pre-event or mid-event strategies have you seen brands execute that significantly increase the quality of the meetings that they're capturing?
Yeah, I think there's 3 different buckets that I would classify my answer in. Is one, it's really good to have a reason to meet, as you mentioned, and you asked us that question, what is your reason to meet?
Yeah.
I think that if you can put something out there that's interesting to people, that attracts them to want to have a conversation with you in advance, somewhat of a like teaser, whether it's like a data insight, some exclusive offer, like whatever you want to do. I think doing it on LinkedIn is a great way to do it. There's also, industry communities like the MarTech Record or Hello Partner, where you can kind of spread the words through those forums. I actually did that for this webinar by creating the conference ROI tracker and guide as like, here's something that you guys can have that could possibly help you with going to conferences, as like something helpful that attracts people and makes people interested. And then when it comes to the prep, oftentimes the prep starts months in advance. So scheduling all your meetings, having that clear agenda, putting your cell phone number in the meeting invite so that last minute you can make adjustments if you need to, making a one sheet with the data for existing partnerships, making a one sheet for why new partners want to work with you if you're meeting with somebody new. So I tend to take a more like prepared and quantitative approach to these conversations. And then you have the data at your fingertips. Obviously, you want to build that relationship again to start off the conversation, not just jump right into it. But then once you've gotten to know each other and you've built a rapport, then you can jump right into the data so that you can like get things done more quickly rather than having to follow up on those types of things afterwards, which slows down the progress. And then some of the like splashy things that I've seen people do really well. I don't know if I'm cutting out a little bit, but a friend of mine actually that I met through the industry, Brooke Partolo, long ago, she didn't want to do like a, $35,000 sponsor at one of the big conferences. So instead of doing that, she rented a private jet and she took a bunch of people from the conference at e-tail to Las Vegas for the night, gave them all some gambling money.
Wow.
I will tell you, every single person at e-tail at that event was talking about it, and everybody knew about, at the time it was Steelhouse Media. And so like doing something really creative and out of the box, if you do have the extra budget, can be really impactful. But I think like some of the generic sponsorships where they just kind of blast your name out isn't really great. But if you can do something meaningful where you can engage with people, like that breakfast that I mentioned, where you can have like real conversations, or if you're going to speak on stage, try to think about something that really matters to your target audience and try to have a strategic conversation, but also give them something really actionable that they can take away, because people hate going to conferences and just hearing like fluffy pontification of like self-promotion, and they're like, I just wasted 30 minutes of my day listening to that. I'd rather have something that I can like take home with me and take action on.
Oh, great calls there. Thank you for that asset. I put the link down below, dustinhouse.com/conference and dustinhouse.com/conference1. These are the assets that Lacey put together. Thank you so much for doing that, Lacey. Appreciate it. And these are takeaways for free that anybody can go and get and check out. So that is a really interesting jet story, the private jet. I love the concept. I hate the concept of missing out on the rest of the conference for like 24 hours. That seems almost, it makes me a little bit anxious, but I get the point. It's an incredible story and a way to like lock those people in and give them that kind of experience. Jason, anything that you've ever done or seen like that?
Like, look, a couple of years ago, Wells Fargo threw like a huge party at CardCon. I mean, like they brought everyone out to like a ranch, and people got cowboy hats and electric guitars, those celebrities, but really what I found was that the sponsors who get the most out of it are frankly the ones that send the people. I have had sponsors who have spent good money and I'm happy for them. And I've told them, send a lot of people, shake hands, make the rounds, build those relationships. Some take my advice, some not so much. So really, if you're a relatively small sponsor, like let's say you host a dinner, you could do that for a reasonable amount of money, and you could send 2 or 3 people to that dinner. And those 2 or 3 people can walk around and start conversations with everyone there, and they get the most bang for their buck, for sure. The people who maybe throw a large party but don't spend, the effort to send their people there, I think get less return on their investment. And we try to do really creative things at CardCon. We've had a meet the speaker lounge, which I just kind of invented with one of my sponsors, where the speakers would come out and you'd shake their hand and talk to them. We've had, Capital One has sponsored a freelance attendee sponsorship where freelance writers would come and, we'd waive their attendance fee and they would give the sponsor some love on their social media.
Nice.
So it's, I like the conferences. I want to be one of those conferences where the organizer works with the company to develop a customized sponsorship package that meets their business goals. What I hear is that the larger conferences are like, this is what we offer, take it or leave it. It either works for you or it doesn't. Have a nice day. I never do that kind of company.
Yeah, it's such a cool call on. I like the speaker side room. That's a really good idea for after that hour. One of the greatest sponsorships I've ever purchased was at PI Live last year in London. They did $5,000 and they will create the dinner for you and they will get you 10 people that are ideal for who you want to meet with at the conference, and they coordinate it. It was a brilliant idea, and I wish more conferences were going out and do.
We'll do that every year at CardCon. It's often a fintech. We've even had a politically oriented media relations company that say we want to host a dinner or a lunch, and we want to have these specific people, and I'll share with them my guest list. And the big value add for them is me as the producer. People who I'm well known within the credit card circle. That if I reach out and I personally invite you, my response rate is pretty close to 100%, especially if you're in town. The people who don't come are the ones whose travel arrangements don't allow it because they know the conference producer is inviting them. It's usually a good idea to be there.
Noelle, any stories from you, favorite sponsorships or events that you've ever gone to?
Yeah, most recently I did my first CJU back in September, and two quick things. Price.com and Trade Doubler did a yacht party of kind of just a afternoon of sailing before the event started. And that was really wonderful experience because who doesn't love to be on a boat in the Pacific? And then something that CJ actually did that I hadn't really seen at a conference. I think network conferences, you can do a little bit more because they're a little smaller and there's a little bit more flexibility, but they actually did a lunch of just finance brands and finance kind of publishers and things like that, where we all just got to sit in a room and have lunch. And, I said it was so valuable. I got to sit in there with like Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase and just bounce ideas, hear what, they're thinking about in terms of finance and fintech moving forward and AI and all of these developments that affect the finance industry. And we all just kind of got to spend that time together. And I know they do that for different verticals. So I thought that was really valuable too, to kind of just, they serve lunch anyway. So why not gather these people into one room and really pick each other's brains?
Smart. All right, Jason, moving to you from an organizer standpoint, what underutilized elements of a conference, whether it be sessions, networking structures, what tends to produce the highest ROI for attendees?
Yeah, I talked about those spontaneous meetings. The people who disappear to their hotel room are missing out on a lot. I know it's hard. I know everyone's got family, work commitments that they have to reply to, but being out there on the conference floor is huge. If we talk about filling up your schedule, preparations, I think everyone made good points of that. Sometimes sponsorship itself, people neglect that. There's one company that comes to my event every year. They send 7, 8, 9 people. They spend as much as it would cost to sponsor something, but they never sponsor it. So every year I try to say, hey, why don't you be a sponsor? I could do it for you pretty much for the same price. And every year they say no. I think they're missing out. I'll try again this year. But, I think events like mine are willing to work with you. If you're going to send a bunch of people, I want you to be a sponsor. There's no reason not to sponsor an event, even at a relatively low level, because typically the conference will include the attendance as a package with the sponsorship. So if I'm sending 4 people anyway, and I'm spending whatever, $5,000, maybe I should just buy a $5,000 sponsorship package that includes 4 attendees. Now my name's out there. Now I'm getting additional value. So, you might not think you're a candidate for sponsorship, but you might be wrong.
Interesting. What about something that always happens at the events is I'm always ranking my meetings. I do this by putting them 1 to 5, like what's the most important. And those are the leads I get back to the first. What are you guys doing in terms of like making a tier system for either pre or post conferences? Anybody using a CRM and like putting this in there? Like any suggestions on that side?
Oh, I'm not that organized. I'm prioritizing it by, what I think the biggest return is going to be. And to the extent that I have to triage when my calendar looked like the one you showed, it's obviously more of the friendly meetups that maybe even those I want to meet up with my friends. The periphery ones, the ones where I know some companies trying to sell me their product that I probably aren't going to ultimately purchase. So those are the ones I'll probably triage out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think as you become more experienced, you start to get a gut instinct on some of this stuff. So
Sure.
I don't necessarily have a system other than like the follow-up conversation documentation that Noel and I have both touched on, is just like having all of the action items listed out. But I usually know the ones that I want to follow up with quickly because I know that they're going to be the most impactful to the business.
And I literally go in order, like in my notebook, every single meeting, and I go one by one to make sure they're all done at once. Some people email me first before I even get a chance. So I kind of just put them all out there, and then I handle the conversations as they flow.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. In my notebook, I'm ranking them 1 to 5, like what, and get to the ones first and then so on and so forth. But at that same time, I'm also, making my mental notes and adding that into my CRM for the future as well. The ones, like, I never stop until I get a hold of them, because there's ghosting that happens at every single conference, but I'm going to find a way to get a hold of them if they're really that important to me. All right, last 10 minutes here. We're going to get into the forecasting and choosing the right events. So we'll start off with Noel. As someone who sees an event at the ground level, what signals tell you an event is trending upward or might be becoming less valuable to you?
I think a lot of this comes down to what you hear people saying on the ground floor when you're at the conference.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you're never going to please everybody with the way that you run an event. But I think that there are certain qualms that people as a whole have at certain events and certain changes that are made. For instance, just ASW and ASE had made the change about putting buffers in between the meetings. And this is something that I had given feedback on before, and then they did it because, you can't get to one end of that conference or one floor of that Marriott to the bottom with no buffer in between your meetings. So you end up missing things. And I think that alone, that change really helps a lot of people. And so I think some conference organizers are really willing to listen to that feedback from the attendees and say, okay, what can we do to make this better so that people keep coming back? So I think just listening to what people are saying at the event, and if you kind of see things taking like more of a negative tone, usually you can kind of see like, well, maybe there's some more changes that this event needs to make. But I think that in our industry, there are a lot of wonderful events and wonderful people that are holding these events who really put their best foot forward and trying to make these such a special experience for everybody. And they're definitely making improvements every single year, whether it's to the apps or the structure of the event itself. And you can kind of just feel that vibe at the event, what's buzzing on the floor, and just trying to, again, just listen to the attendees. And I think every event's different too. Like something like an ASW and ASE, that's a much bigger scale than some of the network events. So they, I think, probably have a lot more things to think about in terms of just the massive amount of attendees coming. But then you see some of the network events that are maybe a little bit smaller. And you hear that from people too. Like, is there enough people at this event to make it worthwhile? But I tend to like both because, I have the most meetings at like an ASW, but at say like a Rakuten or an impact event, I'm really able to have more intimate conversations in terms of like just getting more time with some of my partners than I might have at ASW, and really getting to dive into details in terms of campaigns and partnerships. So I think there's a lot to be said about both types.
Great points. And I will add, like, it infuriates me when people set meetings at their hotel room suite. Yeah, it's a cool experience, but I have to walk from the floor over to Caesars to get to the 50th level and then back. That's like an hour-long round trip. Like, don't do this to me. Just get a specialized table at the event where we can have a private meeting. We don't need to go do that. Please stop doing this, folks. I can't emphasize that enough.
I guess it's so deceiving, is it not? Like when people are like, "Oh, it's at the Cosmo," and you look, and it's like, "Oh, it's right there," and then a half-hour walk later,
Vegas miles are way longer than realistic miles. All right, Lacey, we've only got a few more minutes here, and I want to get to this. When advertising grants on next year's conference calendar, what are the criteria to use to decide which events are worth the investment?
Yeah, again, it's really like a framework that we have, and that's is your audience there. So the audience alignment are your target partners or your buyers if you're an agency looking for new clients. The conversion opportunity, like, are people there to find new partners in some way, whatever, that looks like for you. And then the brand amplification. So are you able to get your name in front of the right people? And so we rate each of those areas to determine which conferences are the highest priority. If a conference only satisfies one of those things, maybe it's not worth your investment. Obviously, the best situation is where you can accomplish all three. And then you have to take into consideration your budget and the price of sending people to the conferences. But you can get really creative with that. I've seen, like Jason was talking about, like sometimes we can do a sponsorship and it's only a couple $1,000s more than sending the 4 people that we were going to send and pay for the full price. And so if you can really build a business case around that, it can make a lot of sense. I would also just like throw in there that sometimes conferences are good one year and crappy the next. And you can't land on a crappy year and then think, oh, this isn't going to work next year. And if the conferences are taking that feedback and making the adjustments, as Noelle said, sometimes it's worth giving them another shot. Like, you shouldn't totally write it off.
Great call. Second chances are worthy. If enough people are telling you that this is a good conference, you should be going to it. You should listen to them. That's how I went to PI Live in Miami, and I absolutely loved my time. And that catapulted me to go to PI London because I had such a good time and a great experience at Miami that I went over there. So keep an open mind. All right, Jason, for you, looking ahead at 2026, what shifts do you expect in conference formats or attendees' behavior that'll impact how companies calculate that ROI?
Shifts. I mean, look, I'll tell you something I've been telling a lot of people lately. COVID showed us, and AI is reinforcing the value of face-to-face meetings. And I can remember we did an online event in 2020, and I said, this was great. Let's never do it again. People, we're dealing with AI taking over the internet, taking over our lives. The value of a face-to-face meeting is great. Companies are approaching me, telling me that they want me to organize more face-to-face meetings at smaller scales, 10, 15 people over lunch seminar. Webinars like what we're doing here right now, things like that are increasingly valuable in a sea of maybe unfruitful online interactions. So I personally am doubling down on conferences and face-to-face meetings as a business model for myself going forward. I see others doing the same. I think we're going to see other businesses taking the same approach to say, hey, this is invaluable to us to have these face meetings. That's where we're going to do the big deals. There's numbers out there, I can't quote them off the top of my head, that say, when you shake someone's hand, when you grab a beer or a coffee or whatever, the chances of your business deal being conducted increase dramatically. And people out there who are trying to do deals, trying to bring home the bacon, they're going to want to get on the road and have those face-to-face meetings now more than ever.
Awesome. Well said. And I think there's a place where like you don't go to too many conferences either. Like if you're doing once a month, like that's a lot, especially if you have family and you got to take care of them. But I like to do 4 to 6 a year. I don't know what you guys feel. Are you guys in that same boat? Jason, you probably do more because of it's your.
Well, if I discount the two, I produce CardCon, which is coming up in April in Phoenix. I also do a financial affiliate marketing forum in Canada. I did that in October. I'll be doing it next October. If I discount those two, I'd probably say I go to 6 to 10. Maybe it was a little bit more back pre-COVID. Some of those are kind of fun. Like I go to maybe a consumer conference about travel rewards. I go to a big aviation event that I've spoken at the last couple of years in Wisconsin. I'm a pilot and I, love airplanes and I speak at that event. And so some of them are just kind of fun conferences. Other them are, like I was at CJU. I went straight from there to FinCon. I'll be at Affiliate Summit. I'll be at, I'm sure I'm forgetting some other conferences that I go to every year that I just, find fascinating and want to try out. And every year I mix it up a little bit. I'm sure, like Noelle and CJU was my first time this year and I loved it. So I'll probably back, but I do definitely mix it up every year.
Cool. Noelle, what are you going to be at?
ASW first up, and then I kind of have to see what the schedule pans out, but probably IPX, ASE, hopefully CJ you again. I'd love to go to Racketons, but we have a company retreat that same week, but that's a good event too. So I'll shout out to that one also, but pretty much any of the main industry events. And I hope to this year kind of learn more about some of the international ones because I don't know as much about, which of those are the most valuable. So maybe PI Live London would be a nice one to go to.
Oh yeah, come join me. Jeremy Aronson says 100% face-to-face conference mixed with office visits. Hey, thanks for tuning in, Jeremy there. And Lacey, what about you? What are you going to?
I don't have a lot of plans for next year yet, but I would say at my peak, I was probably doing 6 to 10 conferences a year as well. And then there's other like smaller events that I like to go to. I love to go to the MarTech record events. I just feel like it's a smaller community, but there's really high quality conversations that are had there. And it's not as much of a commitment as a conference. I don't come home from that exhausted, it's just like an afternoon in LA or New York or something like that. Enjoy conferences outside of just the affiliate specific ones as well, because I think that you have an opportunity to meet with people who are focused on all of the marketing channels. And you also have an opportunity to meet sometimes with more senior decision makers within organizations.
Great calls. All right. I'll be going to Affiliate Summit West, PI Live in London, IPX. My wife works there, so family's all going, and everything else I'm a free agent for. So anybody that wants some user-generated content from me going out and making a clown myself and showing my experience at your conference, hit me up. And
Especially inviting you to CardCon. How's that?
I'm talking about. We got all right. Awesome. Thanks, Jason. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us, Lacey, Noel, Jason. Really appreciate you dropping all these knowledge bombs today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Take care and keep on recruiting. We'll see you out there. Listening to Affiliate Nerd Out.